Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Tuesday, December the 3rd City Council meeting. I now call this meeting to order. I trust that your cell phones have been placed on silent. At this time, I'm going to ask Councilwoman Burrs if she would lead us in the pledge and invocation if she so desires.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. We have no special presentations this afternoon. Could I get a motion on the minutes?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes with a proper second. Without objections, they will stand as recorded. Council, if you would look over this evening's agenda, we have no ordinances on final reading, a couple of ordinances on first reading. Any questions or comments on those? Councilman Smith.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I can get back in line.
Go ahead. Now you're.
So item A under Parks and Public Works is a mandatory referral related to abandonment of an unopened right-of-way. We had deferred this, and if Mr. Wood could come up briefly. We've been researching the different conditions that were originally recommended for this, and Public Works has done some research on them. And so would you mind just briefly going over your assessment of what the conditions were and your recommendations on how we might move forward?
Yes, ma'am. The first condition was the City of Chattanooga has a sewer located within the right-of-way and reserves the easement with the width of the right-of-way for the purpose of maintaining said sewer. There is no sewer that's in that right-of-way. It's all going to be wrapped around the block. Some of it's already there, and then some of it's pending still. So my recommendation is to remove condition number 1. Condition number 2 is the reservation of an easement, the width of the right-of-way for South Central Bell, for the purpose of operating and maintaining its facilities in said right-of-way. There is no utility card that shows anything to be built there. There is no request that's been made, so my recommendation is also to remove that condition. Number 3, the areas reserved for utility easements must be kept free and clear of all structures. There is no reason, because there's no desire for anything else to go back there, so there's no reason for us to have that restriction, so my recommendation is to remove that. Number 4, all existing easements are retained within ordinance number 9745. Ordinance 9745 pertains to the block just north of this block, so it doesn't pertain to this location, so my recommendation is to remove that. And condition number 5, which is subject to revised plats being submitted to the city in order to consolidate and/or subdivide parcels to avoid creation of any landlocked parcels. I would recommend keeping that just so that the constituent would understand exactly where their property lines are.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy.
Yes, ma'am.
So council, based on the research that has been done on this and our thoughtful consideration of it, I'm going to be moving to approve this, striking the recommended conditions 1 through 4 and keeping the 5th condition. And I have made the applicant aware of that and will just double confirm after this meeting before we vote on it.
Okay, this will be done on first reading tonight.
Correct. This will be done on first reading. Thank you very much for your help.
So, Mr. Attorney, we'll need an amendment to this ordinance. Is that
Well,
correct?
I'll make a motion to amend.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm addressing Planning B 2024-0069. This has been going on for a while, and at this point, the applicant has reached out and requested a withdrawal, so I'll be making that motion this evening, sir.
Very good.
Thank you.
I will make that note. All right, that takes us through ordinance's first read for this evening. Moving down into resolutions, we have several board appointments. Any questions or concerns about any of the board appointments? If not, moving on through the Office of City Attorney and Parks and Public Works. Any questions or comments concerning any of those items?
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Burrs.
I think there may be a word left out under the C, Mayor's Office, C. you've left out the word upgrade of the domestic violence shelter.
Now, where are we at?
Oh, excuse me, E. Yeah, sorry, E. Under mayor's office, just the
okay.
word upgrade for upgrade of the domestic violence shelter.
Okay.
Or the domestic.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to be amended. It's just a typo, I think.
Okay.
Mr. Attorney,
Yes, sir.
is that something we just,
Do on the fly if you wish on here, and
Yeah.
how we get it in there.
Okay.
let's do it on the fly. All right, Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I okay to go down to G under transportation, sir?
G under what, sir?
Transportation.
Sure.
I've got a couple of questions on this item. I don't know, Jay or Chris, you and I talked about this a little while. I don't know, Jay, if you've got the answers to it, but this is, for those of you in the audience, this is about our electric scooters that are being proposed here for a pilot, basically. This has been a big concern of mine for a long time, as you know, or at least most of you should know from years ago. So I just had a couple clarifying questions. One of the big issues that we had previously is that they were not docked. This proposal is for docked.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what that means.
So they have a charging station that requires them to be connected to it, and that station will not allow them to go anywhere else and be left. If they are left, then the constituent that was using it will be charged.
Okay, so to be clear, they will be returned to this location, or else whoever checked them out will be charged for continued usage or for the disappearance of such.
Yes, sir.
So we're not going to be seeing these littered around our streets.
No, sir. As of right now, we've had 0 issues with them being littered anywhere.
Okay. Second concern that I had a while back that is not solved through them being docked is identification. Again, years ago, a lot of the issues that were happening in other cities is people flying down sidewalks, hitting people, and just keep on going, keep running, running into vehicles, causing damage, and again, keep going and leaving the property owners or those that were affected to deal with it on their own without accountability. So my question had to do with, is there an easy way to identify, knowing GPS, especially moving, is not accurate enough to identify a particular individual? Do we have some kind of solution potentially moving forward to help identify these, putting numbers on them, something that is a little bit more visible to constituents should there be a concern?
There was 0 plan on that. I hadn't heard anything about it. We can definitely do something with that. I know they're all serial numbers, so they're tracked accordingly. We have those printouts back and forth with the SBCT that we're talking to. The in-state, if we want to put numbers on them or stickers that identify them as City of Chattanooga property, however we want to move forward, we can definitely do that.
I would definitely be interested in hearing a proposal on it, and I'm talking visible.
Mhm.
So should something like that occur, it's easy to say scooter, 1, 2, 3, there was an incident with.
Yes, sir.
And then now you can look up who was on it, as opposed to 4 of them blowing down the sidewalk, you don't know who's who.
Yep.
GPS is going to help you with a situation like that. So just for accountability and additional safety for our constituents, I'd be interested to know how we're going to handle that moving forward.
Yes, sir. I'll get the answer for you.
We can have a plan about the business.
Okay. We'll have a plan by the business meeting.
That'd be good. Thank you. Those were my
Absolutely.
questions, sir.
All right, Councilman Ledford, relating to scooters?
Yes, sir. So I too had very much apprehension to scooters, along with Councilman Smith. And I think it was warranted because visiting several cities that allowed them to run amok was dangerous.
Yes, sir.
I witnessed it firsthand, as many of you have witnessed it firsthand. So docked, thank you for that qualifier. I think that is incredible. One of the questions that was brought up during the initial conversation years ago on this was scootering while intoxicated. So if Chief, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. A DUI or a scooter UI or whatever is still, this is still applicable. The law is the law, right?
Yes, sir, the law is the law.
Okay.
A motorized vehicle, I believe, is what state statute references.
Because I know as many Chattanoogans have been and visited other cities, we've seen the downside of this, and we've seen that this becomes a quick and easy, convenient way to get around and maybe when you shouldn't be behind operating anything but your 2 feet, and maybe not even that questionable. So I want to make sure that the public is assured that that is going to be
The
enforced.
laws will be enforced.
The law will be enforced.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Objectively, across the board.
Very good. I
Yes,
thank
sir.
you very much for that. Jay, good work. Chris, thank you for the phone call and the conversation on this. I think it quells a lot of apprehensions that we had in the beginning. And honestly, I think it's a responsible way to address this through this process. So thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Councilwoman Coonrod?
Thank you,
Scooters?
Chair. So from the lunch or the pilot we done, are we keeping those? I think it was like 15 that we had in the pilot to go with the 30, so a total of 45? or
No, ma'am, it would be the 15 original plus 15.
plus 15 more?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in order, would it be additional stations to dock them at, or just the one?
Yes,
where
ma'am,
we
we're looking at
piloted?
additional locations for docking stations.
What would those locations be? Is it mainly just downtown?
I do not have those locations right now.
Okay, thank you. Because I know we got a bike docking station at Highland Park, so they may be interested in having scooters docked there.
That's something we're trying to bridge that gap so that it's more convenient for the community. So we're looking at pushing stations out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Burrs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up. I too have had some of the same concerns my colleagues have had. So, Chris, did you put fault, where's Chris?
He ran.
I'll just stay up here, that's good.
I always liked, I'm biased toward the law. It's in accordance with ordinance whatever, right? In other words, everything that we're talking about here, they're talking about rules and regulations in operating a scooter or in putting up a scooter facility or that sort of thing. So every one of these suggestions that have come up and others, where will they be listed or codified so that a company knows that it has to identify its scooter with a number or whatever? You know where I'm going with this? In accordance with what law?
I don't think that a law is necessary for just the policy of having them numbered, especially since it's a sole source provider. It's not
Do we
open
have
to
a
a bunch of other
scooter
companies.
law in Chattanooga?
Phil?
State law.
All right, if there's a state law, right?
Yes.
And does the state law cover the concerns of my colleagues?
As of July 1st, 2019, drinking and riding on a scooter above the limits of normal alcohol consumption are not allowed. And a person can be charged with a DUI in Tennessee if they've done that.
All right.
Our state law was amended to require that.
Okay, so that takes care of that. Now, as far as the policy of dumping the scooter, just leaving it, we have a policy to address that.
Yes, ma'am, those are.
So I heard great
policies.
things that you talked about addressing. I just want to make sure it's in policy, that's all.
Yes, and we will add something and have, by the time we get back to the business meeting, we'll have a plan for the stenciling or lettering or numbering, as Councilman Smith
That's- yeah,
requested. and
that's
we
all
talked
I'm
about
saying.
yesterday. We'll have that written down in a policy document. I don't see any need for an ordinance to include that level of detail.
All right, so just so the other side of the contract, which is the company, understands that we're agreeing to this as governed by the city's policies. That's all I want in there. Just so the companies understand, so they don't come back and say, we didn't know. Lots of times, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. That's my only concern.
Yes, ma'am, and I was just reminded by my colleague that we do have one scooter ordinance, and it just is a moratorium on the dockless scooters passed by the gentleman on the end there.
Okay,
Well, sponsored.
Sponsored by.
yeah. So I kind of knew that, but I just wanted on the record that, we need to have proper policies for these so that they're not junked all over town. What do we do if, these are just thoughts I'm throwing out for the record. What do we do if I'm found negligent in the scooter and I'm fined $2,000, or I have to, how do we collect that? How do we enforce that?
Every scooter right now has a card associated with it, so their card is on file. So at any charges that go onto it would be immediate.
Okay, and how do we enforce that?
It would all be
Suppose I
through-
leave town and don't pay.
It would be through the agreement or the ordinance, whenever we put the policy
We
together.
already have your card information, you're going to pay.
Okay, so these are all kind of redundant questions, but that's the kind of stuff I would want in the policy. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Coonrod, to follow up?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, because I was gonna mention that Ken, when he created the ordinance and we passed it. But also, the city attorney, he failed to mention too, that we have control on, even if we want, the dock scooters. It's not just the dockless, if we, you know, and a lot of people say they were against it, but, and I know it kind of slid in when we did the pilot, because I was like, oh, okay. They trying to ease it in different ways. We tried to pilot, now it's the ordinance to say, let's add some additional ones. Then next thing you know, we could be saying, let's get the ones that's dockless. So we gotta be careful to even create something to say, maybe if it's a limit on what we wanna have in our city, because we don't want it to get too far and it's gonna be to where it's out of our control. But we do control under the state law, it says that we have the control over that. Not the administration, but city council.
Thank you. Jeremy or Chris, you know, my question is always, we're putting 30 more out there, and we're all well-intentioned and hope we've, you know, got everything, all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. Do we have a nuclear option in this contract that says this is not working, get them out of here?
Yes, sir. We have an immediate
what does
clause
that-
with a 30-day notice.
I'm sorry?
We have a 30-day notice clause, portion in the clause, so we can notify them within 30 days and say we're done.
And we don't have to give a reason, it's
No, sir.
without cause, we can
Yes, sir.
ask them to pack up and they
Absolutely.
understand it.
And then
that'll
we would
be in the
retain
contract
those.
and they understand it.
We would retain the equipment because it would be purchased by us.
Okay. As long as we have the ability to get rid of them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. With the contract?
Yeah.
They sent it to us already.
I believe it's linked in the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
For the record. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this week's agenda? If not, we'll move to next week's proposed agenda. Our ordinances on first reading this week will be final reading next week. And then we will have Planning and Zoning Committee following our agenda session here, correct? Correct. Councilman? So any question you have on planning, we'll save for our Planning and Zoning Committee following this. Then moving into resolutions. Any questions or comments concerning any of our resolutions that's being offered for next week? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to also notice a public hearing on the official zoning map, the equivalency map that we've been working on is scheduled for next week. We will be discussing that in planning and zoning as well today.
Sure. Thank you.
And then when we get to fire, I would like to call Chief Hyman up. I'd love to hear more about the heavy rescue apparatus FEMA grant.
Well, we're there now. If you want him to come forward now?
Only if he's ready.
I'm ready.
Oh, that man stays ready.
Chief, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for asking.
Yes.
The heavy rescue is, it's an addition to our fleet. We hope to get this grant. It's about a $2 million truck that will supplement our special rescue team. So the way that our special rescue is set up now, we have 5 different squads that operate throughout the city. This truck would be a kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of those special technical rescues. So the more rescues that we've had over time, this will be a multifaceted truck. It'll be able to do confined space, rope rescue, collapse rescue, trench rescue, all on one vehicle.
Okay, this is, covers some bases I remember talking about back, I think, 2018, 2019, does it?
It does, yeah, and this is kind of the next step. So we have a truck that's similar to this now, but it's not staffed, so we don't run it as a normal apparatus. So if we get a large collapse or we get a trench rescue, we have to down a fire truck to go get that apparatus and then take it to the scene. So you can see that being a little bit cumbersome. This would be a fully staffed truck that we're looking to add to our fleet. So it doesn't have water capabilities like putting out fire stuff. So its primary goal will be technical rescue.
Will there be any, when I say heavy rescue, any lifting capacity
Yes.
beyond what we're?
Yes, so it's kind of the next level of our lifting capacity. All of our squad trucks have some limited capability to lift. We can't do full-on semi-type lifts, but this will have airbags and struts and things that can lift a lot heavier weights that we come in contact with frequently.
So I hate to bring this up, but Chairman, I will. So if we had a situation blocking traffic, would the fire department maybe able to help without obviously overstepping legal boundaries and capability?
You're talking about moving a vehicle out of the roadway?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say it.
We would probably lean more on the Class C wreckers to be able to pull that off. They can lift and suspend vehicles like that a little bit easier than we can. This truck will not have a large boom on it that we could do any kind of those operations. So our primary goal would be to do the rescue, stabilize the vehicle, lift if we need to remove somebody, and then let the wrecker company take over on getting it out of the way.
But it'll give us a head start.
It will give it a head start and give the victims much more better survivability profile.
Saving lives. Thank you, Chief.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Coonrod?
Thank you,
Question
Chair.
on the
Not
phone?
about the apparatus, but I just wanted to tell you, thank you all for coming up with the safe haven box.
Yes.
I'm glad that you all implemented. I think it's at Station 6.
It is. It's at Station 6. It's fully operational now. And Mariah, that came to us, that she actually brought it to us. And I wasn't real sure about it at first. And then I heard so many folks throughout the United States using them. And we've been in the safe haven law since, for quite some time now. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And she had a very compelling story anyway. So, but yeah, I think it was a good thing. No babies yet.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Oh,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill, hold on a minute.
Sorry, we are a chatty group today.
That's all right.
Maybe we all just rested over Thanksgiving. I just wanted to say in public, since you were here, thank you so much to your team that came and stopped the fire on Fraser Avenue. We had a multifamily building where we had an electric vehicle fire, and electric vehicle fires are very dangerous. They burn very hot and are difficult to put out, and it's a real testament to our Chattanooga Fire Department for the fact that you all are well-trained, you're responsive, and when I was speaking with folks that day, they obviously were very frightened. Many of them had to climb down ladders, and we're just immensely grateful for all of you, so thank you very, very much.
And thank you for being responsive to it as well and checking on the residents there. That meant a lot to me that you were checking on the folks that were there.
That's the
So,
least I could do.
Yeah.
But you all, it's been a real testament to the community, so thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, council, moving to our purchase items for this afternoon. We have 6 purchase items for your consideration. Any questions or comments on any of these? If not, we'll move to future considerations. Anything on our future considerations that needs to be brought to the council's attention at this time? All right, I am not seeing any. All right, council, we will need, and I won't even say a brief attorney-client this time. It's probably going to take a little bit of time. So Councilman Ledford, after we get through with planning and zoning, we may need to recess for about 45 minutes this afternoon. All right? So Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. It's been 30 days since I've asked the community development to give us an update about what's their plan and making sure that our employees are protected against violence, or even if they try to, stop any violence from happening. So if Ms. Joy or Mandy or somebody could come give us an update on it.
Well, Chief, are we ready for that update? I know Councilwoman Coonrod did ask, I guess it was about a month ago.
Yeah, it's been a month.
For an update on some policy around our community directors and employees being able to protect or from, I guess, breaking up a fight without, possibility of retaliation or losing their job.
Good afternoon, council. So I'll speak for a second, and then I'll let Joy fill in. But we did have an additional meeting. We met with the committee that is talking about what we're going to do. There's some training from Cornell University that Hamilton County Schools uses right now. And so we talked to them about how we could get a train the trainer and get some people in to train our staff. And so we have had an additional meeting about that to talk about it. I don't know that we're ready for an official update with a policy to share with you, but I'll let Joy go ahead and step in.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So just for some updates about what we have been working on, as Mandy mentioned, our team had our multidisciplinary physical intervention committee meeting. So that includes both representation from community development, especially representation from our staff through the center managers who are part of that committee, also the police department, human resources, the city attorney's office, mayor's office, and we've invited early learning. From that meeting in particular, we wanted to look at lessons learned from models applied in our school system. So we will be doing a walkthrough at Shepherd Community Center, actually, because we learned from the school system about this training through Cornell University. This is called the Therapeutic Crisis Intervention Training. So it not only provides training in de-escalation, but also very trauma-informed. We want to make sure that our community centers are trauma-sensitive environments for adults and children, that everyone feels safe, but also be very proactive, in addressing any potential situations that could lead to violence and harm. So with that community center visit, we are going to be taking our committee to Shepherd on Friday, this Friday, to do a walkthrough because we wanted to really see in action how this can be applied. And from there, we'll be reconvening again. But again, that primary goal is really to see firsthand what the environment is like whenever the children come from the school to the community center. Just to better understand the dynamics at play, identify areas that will require attention so that we can keep this especially in mind as we pursue that training, where we're really looking at getting that training for our staff, and then from there making sure that these managers are able to train their teams as well, so everybody has some level of understanding and competency in that area. Any questions for me regarding that, or for Mandy?
Well, Councilwoman, did you have a follow-up? Okay. Councilwoman Burrs.
So you said you're going to be in Shepherd Community Center?
Yes.
What time?
We will be there at 3 p.m.
And how long do you plan on being, 3 to what?
At least for an hour. We'll be there from 3 to 4 to catch that after school time.
Thank you. I look forward to joining you.
Sure, we'll see you there.
All right, any other questions? Not seeing any lights.
Okay, thank you.
What? Oh, you got a follow-up?
Is
Okay.
that,
Well, hold on. just-
not with Ms. Joy. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
done.
okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
You good?
Thank you for, yeah. So my next ask is, to move forward with placing a mass violence ordinance on the agenda. If we can have that placed on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's been through committee, so, Mr. Attorney, if you just go ahead and have that placed on the
Next week, or-
The 2-week agenda.
Okay, it'll be right at the first of the year. Yeah. Got one before?
Yeah, because we'll be off the.
17th.
17, all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Okay, with nothing else, I will turn the chair over to Councilman Ledford for planning and zoning.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Planning and Zoning for December 3rd, 2024. We'll accept a motion on our minutes from our last meeting. Minutes will stand without objection. Ms. Reddick, are you ready? We have a couple items to kick off. We have a couple of items to cover coming out of Planning Commission. And do you want to start off with our cases with opposition? You want to go into the equivalency map?
I've got a presentation, and maybe while that's coming up, we can hit the sign code, just so it doesn't get lost in the zoning. And Chris is just going to give just a brief update on that.
Sure.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, council. We've been meeting every week, making small tweaks to the sign code to make it as perfect as it can be to bring back to you. I know that we had a strategic planning meeting where we presented. So as not to rush and get it done by the end of the year, we're going to take a few more weeks with it with some outside advice from industry experts. So right now, we're looking at coming back to you with your permission on January 7 to report any changes that have been made since the presentation at strategic planning. And then we would hope for a first read on January 14.
Chris, let me ask the council, real quick, any objections to the 7th for our next report and the 23rd? What date was that again?
The 14th and the 21st would be the
14th
readings.
and the 21st?
Yes.
And let me remind council, you do have a copy of the draft. Chris, have any changes been made to the draft that we need to be aware of? And if they are, would you please make sure we have them to coincide with the copy of the draft code?
That's what we intend to bring back to you on January 7. There has been nothing substantial at this point,
Okay.
but there are some small changes, and we want to be very transparent about those.
Thank you. And I wanted to have those changes, if anything major, so we could digest over the holidays. Because I know that we'll have time to do that, right?
Read about signs.
Read about signs? Come on, help me out here. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one excited. All right.
Sounds like a fun holiday. If anything big comes up between now and then, we'll absolutely get them to you, to the
Okay,
entire
just keep
council.
us, keep us in the loop, Chris. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments? Chairman, I think I see my name, your light.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Karen, I had asked for a copy of the revised, I guess, well, at least the most updated map for our equivalency map.
Yes, I will get that to you. I apologize.
Okay.
Yes, and we can give them to everyone. We did an update on the 22nd, so those are ready to go now. Yes, thank you for the reminder.
Okay, thank you.
Let me make a note.
It is updated online though, Karen, too, as
It
well.
is updated online. It was updated. It got pushed out the 21st, and so we're just calling it the 22nd since it was late in the day.
Those hard copies, I know, were very helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
That's what I was
you.
looking for, is a hard
Yes,
copy.
sir.
Yeah,
Sure.
I will do that by district. Thank you for the reminder. We're hit briefly, the adoption of the new official zoning map. We have the zoning cases, we have 4 with opposition. 1 comes with a recommendation from Planning Commission to deny, and then I'll end on the zoning ordinance amendments. And then if anything else comes up, I'm happy to answer them. Just as a reminder, we have 2 months of zoning cases, there are, the last month was a lot of the applicant request, and you'll see this on the agenda, so I just want to flag it. An applicant request that was denied with a Planning Commission recommendation for something different. We have quite a few of those. The discussion at Planning Commission was just having applicants and Planning Commission start to understand the zone. So a lot of times the applicant might have asked for a more robust or more intense zone, and after discussion, there was often a change to a lower intensity zone. I'm not aware there's any concerns from any of the applicants. That's just a little bit of an unusual circumstance just as we start to use that new zoning ordinance. The official zoning map, we did a presentation at strategic planning on the 19th. There haven't been a lot of changes. This is going to be slightly tedious because we just want to be really transparent and clear on what has changed. We do have that public hearing as mentioned, and then followed by the adoption of the new map and repealing that current zoning map. The current zoning map will be going away. So I'm going to skip some of the slides that we've already covered and just highlight. I would like to be able to cover these maybe if possible at the beginning of the public hearing if anyone's here. These are cover some of the highlights that conditions still are in play. The zoning map includes special permits. We're not, the zoning map includes form-based code, but we have not made any changes to the form-based code. We're repealing that official zoning map. We had lots of requests to have that available for reference in the future. We will do that. We do have an equivalency table that every zone in the city is going from this zone to that zone. We've documented that. And we'll have that handy and available. And then we have a few outliers, and we'll talk about those. So the official zoning map are those equivalent zones. There's the ordinance and attachments have been updated. Maria added those in. I think there's 55 pages now. But just to be really clear on the documentation, and there's a map in there, but it'll be hard for you to read. But The official zoning map are those equivalent zones that are on the table that have been mapped, include special exceptions permits. We have some corrections that we finalized on the 22nd. Some of those were flagged at Planning Commission at Strategic Planning, including Fort Wood. We kind of got caught up in some of the UTC institutional zones. I'll touch on that briefly. We had 4 requests for exceptions to the equivalent zones. And then we had someone call recently saying, I think you've got my zone wrong, and we do want to correct that. So we had a last minute change yesterday. So we have a digital file. It was last updated on the 22nd. That is what's online. We did 2 legal notices that reference this updated map. And we have the equivalency table, which also has new conditions added to it. So an example, the M3 warehouse and wholesale zone does not have a very equivalent zone. So that does come with some conditions, so it doesn't open up to full commercial retail use, because it's a pretty seldom used older zone. So I want to focus on the corrections, exceptions, and additional change to be transparent. If somebody walked through this process, they could understand how these, where these last changes were made. And excuse me, that says 4 exceptions, we're down to 3. Going through the process, I mentioned this at strategic planning. We had 2 property owners for 3 properties. Once they started looking at the equivalent zone, said, actually, based on what I'm doing or what I would like to do, I would like a different zone. The reasoning's documented there. Staff did a quick review. Overall, these are more intense zoning. So the set of CMU1, which is a pretty big mixed multi-unit zone, more of a traditional residential zone, and one is removing a condition and becoming more intense. And this becomes with a recommendation to approve these with Planning Commission. So if I'm not on the table, I'm here. And then we did a couple corrections, and these were the ones that were mentioned at Planning Commission, and we flagged also Fort Wood. They have, there are some corrections to go to the equivalency table. We have a table in the ordinance to say which ones were impacted. The RTZ, we had some that when we went through the process, we changed the equivalency zone. Those were mapped to the equivalency table. And then we had 3 that we've cleaned up. The last one is the recent change. That is not identified in the current ordinance, and we would like to add that. First Christian Church reached out and said, based on our zoning and conditions, we think we should be I don't think you have it right, and we reviewed it, and it should be CMU2. So just to be clear, and walking through all this should be documented in the ordinance, and we'll add that last one in if possible.
Very good. Karen, I want to also add that you are and have been extremely responsive to working with concerns. So, Chris, I know your office as well, and Karen, if anyone has a specific concern about this process or their site, you are open for business still.
Yes, and so we had a couple questions after the first legal notice in the paper. This was after the second legal notice. And yes, we want to make sure we have it right. So in this case, they had conditions, quite a bit of conditions, and in reviewing, they were right. Based on what they were seeing, we didn't have it right, and it gave us the opportunity to correct that. So there will probably be some others between the zoning and conditions, but yes, we are still open, and that's why I just wanted, so First Christian Church is watching, or I can confirm to them that we have this on the list, because they did make the effort to reach out.
Well, and I want to underscore, because we have promised during this process to be not only be transparent, but to be responsive.
Yes.
And not to cause any harm. And I think that you are honoring that through what I have seen so far in the responses and anyone that needs to come and talk about any concerns.
Thank you. We are, at this point, not aware of anyone who has an outstanding issue, who has not had a response from staff or is waiting for information. We do have 2 amendments that we'll queue up for Planning Commission to make sure the equivalency is as close as we can. But as of right now, I'm not aware of any outliers, so thank you for that. But we want to talk to someone if there is someone who's hearing about this for the first time.
Okay. So the door is still open.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So RPA@chattanooga.gov will contact staff.
Very good. Thank you for that.
And then this, just a note, this closes out the current zoning map. In any cases that were tabled or deferred indefinitely, since sounds like the Towerco case will be withdrawn, we can edit the ordinance so we don't have to reference that anymore, but I can get with the city attorney on that.
Very good. You should have an answer to that shortly.
That's correct, sounds like it. Okay, any questions on the map? I'm happy to do just a very quick overview at the public hearing if that's desired, but Chairman, I can coordinate with you on that.
No questions at this time from council.
Okay. I'm going to stop briefly. I'll go through cases. The first one with opposition was 165. I'm going to stop briefly at 162. The Planning Commission, when it was preparing for council, I noticed the Planning Commission resolution was incorrect in requesting that the ordinance be amended to read, the condition should read maximum density of 31 dwelling units. So this is a case, and that's what the applicant was proposing, a number of units. It says units per acre, but it's just 31 dwelling units, but otherwise that should be correct. There was no opposition, we just had that wrong in the Planning Commission.
Thank
But I
you.
will send that as an email.
And that's in District 3. Councilman
Yes.
Smith, any questions on that one? I know you might have one on a following case.
Okay, so case 165 was the first one in opposition, and I'm going to just briefly mention this one because we did have an email in opposition, which I want to honor that, but the language in the email, which was from the Windward Cove Neighborhood Association, was regarding an underground pipe and concern about irrigation tile and water runoff, and I did not see from their letter that there was any concern about the rezoning itself. They had just flagged that, and they had said that they were in communication with their council member. So I'll move on from that one unless there's
Hang
a
on one
question.
second. Karen, I do have Councilman
Yes.
Smith's light. You are active, sir.
Hey, Karen, thank you. I have gotten a lot of opposition on this,
Okay.
actually. I figured they would try to come down, but probably were just not able to.
Yes.
Can I get a presentation on it?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so the request is for Webb Road. It does come with a staff recommendation to deny, and I will note that due to the holiday, we had Planning Commission one week off. So we did push that out quite a bit, but that could be possibly the reason also. So request is to rezone 4281 Webb Road, from R1 to RN3 residential neighborhood zone for a small lot subdivision. And so there is no recent zoning history on the site, but there are special permits. So the hatch mark on the zoning map are showing the variety of special permits for PUDs in the area. 4221 Webb, the 4500 block of Webb, and the 4400 block of Webb all have PUDs on them. The site is vacant. Generally, development trends in the area are residential subdivisions on 7,000 square foot lots or larger. The staff found that the request is not compatible with the density recommendations listed in the Highway 5058 plan and adjacent development form. The RN16 zone is more appropriate, and that's what the equivalent zone would be, is more appropriate because the lot sizes, lot widths, and density are more compatible. Staff recommended to deny. The Planning Commission determined that with a condition, the request is compatible and recommended subject to a maximum density limited to maximum of 5 dwelling units per acre. So with that condition, that is appropriate at that location. And I'm happy to take any questions. And I'm confirming that, yes, my apologies. It is to RN13. I just wanted to double check that. It's to RN13, which is the 3,000, it's our new R1 zone with the 3,000 square foot minimum lot size. So I will correct that in time for the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. That was actually one of my questions, to make sure that we were saying the same thing, because it looked different there. The other question is, so the condition for approval is just a maximum dwelling units per acre, whereas the request is to get more units in an acre as opposed to the lot sizes. So they're avoiding the lot size requirement to get more units in an acre, correct?
So yes, and lot width, I believe, is also a factor. So the tool itself brings down the lot size and the associated standard for that lot width. So it does, because this isn't a PUD, for example, if there was no condition, nothing would hold them to not having a 3,000 square foot minimum lot size for all of those lots. So that is the minimum in this case. There could be area reserved for open space, but that is, because we kind of think of a PUD and clustering, this is similar, but there is no restrictions on any changes to the land use or reservation of open space.
Okay, and that is the difference I wanted to clarify as well. So if it stays R1, if this is not approved, the lot size is what?
6,000, it'll be the
Six.
RN16, which is what everything outside of the Mountain Creek Lookout Valley and urban overlay is.
Okay.
And that was what staff is saying, the RN16 zone is more appropriate because of that lot size and lot width.
So not doing anything grants us that essentially by default, right? It's still 6,000. Is there any other
That's
difference?
correct. Pardon?
Is there any other difference between where it's currently zoned and the R16?
That is the most, I think that is the lot size is the most determinant factor of that. Because right now it's currently 7,500 square foot minimum lot size. The RN16 gives you the 6,000. This would drop that in half.
Okay. So some of the opposition I've had is obvious to the development in the area, but it was focused on the type of building as opposed to how everybody else is and all the other developments. And everything that you see around this has been developed with the exception of one or two neighborhoods. I've been sitting up here when it got developed, and we were very careful to make sure that it stayed the same and succinct in development. So I plan to continue to hold to that unless there is some overwhelming reason. I tend to agree with staff on this one. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything I was missing else.
I will, it's in the staff report, but mention the PUDs. There are several PUDs, and several of those have conditions, and I don't have them in front of me, but they have conditions for density, and a lot of that other was developed using a PUD, which is still an acceptable tool.
There were some slope issues in a couple of those neighborhoods to where they had to shift them around a little bit. That I understand, as opposed to doing it intentional for the density piece. So, okay, thank you, appreciate it.
If I may, thank you, Councilman. It's a great point. Karen, can you run a couple of quick numbers for me? With the staff's recommendation for a density cap, would that put this into a category for RN15, or does it leave it back to 6?
So I can't, the applicant would have to speak for the reason for choosing the RN13. I would assume it is related to the lot width on some of those and perhaps the.
Because we had that same conversation about two projects.
Correct.
In District 4, and upon that conversation, I'm sure, and we didn't have the benefit of the conversation, those requests were made at Planning Commission for RN15, and that seemed to find the middle common ground, but understanding, obviously this will be a conversation moving forward, as we've heard. But the other part I want to make a point to council is the misnomer of not having a PUD as a tool has kind of been floated out there. And I want to make sure that we understand that abandoning the PUD process is not our intent. The PUD process is a very important tool, especially when it comes to community benefit. And we covered this, I mean, we were in there from 1 o'clock to 5:30 at Planning Commission, and a lot of that conversation was anchored around the RN13, and obviously we understand coming out of the box, it's what we're offering, and we're going to learn as we go, but abandoning the PUD process for just that sake, especially in areas outlying of the urban overlay, is a topic of concern that I think we need to pick up on. I do not think we need to abandon the PUD process and all that it offers the public, especially when it comes to tying a site plan. Being able to cluster, but also retain those green spaces and amenities that I think folks want. So that's a side note, but I want to make sure that we covered that, so.
And there is another case coming up that's exactly the same discussion where Planning Commission recommended a PUD.
Correct. And I do appreciate, even on the fly at Planning Commission, our developers recognizing that engaging in conversation, even in a public forum, where they realize where our thinking was. And I think that's not only healthy, but it's very, very productive. So.
Great. The next case with opposition was 184, and this is a rezoning from R1 to RN2, and RN2 is similar to maybe the RTZ, the prior RTZ. This property would be equivalency map to RN16. The applicant wanted to do a mix of single-unit detached and townhomes, and the townhomes would be clustered to the interior of the subdivision. This is an East Brainerd, and the applicant has wanted to do 43 units on 6 acres for a density of 7 dwelling units an acre. There is RTZ, so again, I mentioned the RN2 is somewhat similar to the current RTZ. There are 2 properties in the Jenkins Road area that were rezoned to RTZ. One has a PUD with conditions, and the other also has conditions on those. Those are shown with the arrow a little bit to the southwest of the site and the north of the site. It's a mix of single-unit residential and large lot development in the area. Staff found that the request is not compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses and development form. The density was higher than the density in the area, and the RN2 zone would introduce multi-unit residential forms. So staff recommended denial. There was opposition, particularly from the people on Graham, about the narrowness of the street, speeding, concern about school children walking on the road. Planning Commission, this is another one of those where it's quite a bit of discussion because equivalency mapping was going to be RN16. Planning Commission felt the RN15 zone would be more appropriate this location and does not introduce attached housing. So Planning Commission recommended denial of the applicant's request and approval of the RN15 with a condition to improve Graham Road in front of the development to CDOT standards for public streets.
Karen, this one obviously is in District 4, I'm very familiar with, and we did have a lot of conversation on this particular case, and this is one where I appreciate the developer listening. So not only to the folks who live in that area on Graham Road and behind there. This is important because on the fly, it was determined that this is a better option to keep it with single-family detached, and also I think there's a condition in there about road improvement.
That's correct.
Which is something you'll always hear from me. But I think by doing that, this is the better option for the request, because that place type being mixed in there was definitely, I think, inappropriate request. But this is a good example of the conversations that we've been having at Planning Commission that lead to council and solutions that we're seeing now on paper.
That's correct. That's why I think there are quite a few changes at Planning Commission just to kind of right size to the correct zone.
We're doing a lot of work over there at the courthouse, I promise.
The next case is 183. It's a rezoning 1733 Mitchell Avenue, and these are form-based code zones. The URD2, Urban Residential Detached, to the URA3, Urban Residential Attached Zone, to build 3 attached residential units. Let me orient you first. So this is just about a half block east of Market, a block north of 23rd Street. So it's a mix of single unit attached, detached, utility, commercial, some manufacturing property mixed in. The site was rezoned to form-based code in 2016 as part of the broader form-based code rezoning. There was a site just to the east, it shows up in orange. That is a URA3 zone that was rezoned by council in 2022. And so staff does reference that, but says that that situation is a little bit different and that it faces a commercial corner, including a manufacturing site. So site plan is for the 3 units. Staff recommended that the request isn't compatible. Small lot size will make development difficult due to some protected zones requirements, and then concerns about the amount of curb cuts on the site. So really it's more the tool for development here. Staff recommended to deny. There was opposition present. I believe the gentleman lives next door, just concerned about the maintenance of the property now and just interest in what was being built and parking concerns. So there was some discussion about that being addressed in permitting. So it comes with a Planning Commission recommendation to approve.
Thank you. And I have been in consultation with Councilwoman Dotley on this particular case, and she has asked for it to be deferred until December 17th. We have notified the applicant as well, and he is prepared.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last case with opposition, and this was the case that had the most substantial opposition of the cases present, I believe, is a rezoning at 3511 Parkway Drive from R1 to RN13 residential neighborhood zone for a small lot, single unit detached residential subdivision. And this property is in East Chattanooga, adjacent to the Battery Heights neighborhood. It has frontage on Bonnie Oaks Drive. You head west to Glass Street and then Parkway Drive. So the access to the property has frontage on both those streets. And Parkway Drive is the access to Battery Heights. And I'm mentioning that and showing the next picture just because there was a lot of communication from Battery Heights neighborhood and the applicant and Battery Heights communicating together. And this is the entrance. The site would be, is kind of the triangle there shown and with the tree line. So this would be equivalency mapped RN16. And the proposal is to build 25 homes on 5 dwelling units an acre, surrounded by R1 residential, which would be equivalency mapped to RN16 also. The applicant provided both a site plan for the requested RN13 zone and the RN16, what could be developed under the new RN16 that it's equivalency mapped to, is a communication tool with the community. Staff found that the request is not compatible with adjacent development form and Area 3 plan recommendations. The RN13 zone allows a 3,000 square foot lot size, 15-foot setbacks, and 25-foot lot frontage. There are no other 3,000 square foot lots in the immediate vicinity of the site, and the property will be equivalency mapped to RN16 with a 6,000 square foot lot size and a 55 front lot frontage. The RN16 zone is more appropriate to this location than the RN13. Again, that's the staff recommendation. There was opposition present. It's just this is not the right choice. The zone's not the right choice for the location. Concern about the lack of the loss of the green space, perhaps is a better term. They also have a historic neighborhood. So Planning Commission, this is another one, like Councilman Ledford just mentioned, a lot of discussion about Planning Commission. Their determination is the request zone is not compatible with the Area 3 Historic River Ridge Plan, adjacent development form, and encourage the applicant to look at a planned unit development that a PUD would be a more appropriate tool at this location, and Planning Commission is recommending to deny. The applicant did recommend, when I just reached out for an update, did mention that he's proposing 2 conditions, but I'll let him speak to that in case something has changed since the time I know he's been speaking with Councilman Coonrod about this.
Councilwoman Coonrod, before you hit your light on this particular case, if you'll allow me to set the scene at Planning Commission. It was a very lengthy conversation, and I think that it's important to shed some light on. The RM13 request, I think, and the denial by staff is absolutely correct, and from what I heard. The PUD process was brought up, and that's why I can't overstress that enough, that we not abandon that. There are a lot of good things to come with the PUD process. That is to say that there are steep slopes. If you look at the topo, I picked that up immediately, and I think that further conversation with the neighborhood association was encouraged, and they were very passionate about what happens to that property, and I understand why, and they should be. So I wanted to kind of set the scene for you on that in regards to the RN13 and the denial and the conversation with the neighborhood. And there were quite a few folks that were there in regards. So I'll be glad to entertain your light at this time. If you have any questions or anything we can help you with.
Sure. I don't have any additional questions, just to add, that community is very passionate about what happens. I encourage Sheena and the rest of the residents to advocate for what they want. Like, don't just settle for it. If you're against it, your voice is needed. Because a lot of times people don't speak up about it. They were very passionate about it. We've had several meetings with the developer to try to come with a compromise, and it just didn't get to that point. The only concern that I do have is the things that they are asking for or would like to keep. It could possibly not still happen if they still build housing with the way that it's already zoned for. So I'm really concerned about that. So hopefully Alan and his crew will be willing to do a PUD. Hopefully they'll withdraw and resubmit to do a PUD is what I'm hoping for and pushing for with him. But there are some other concerns still, like even the way that it's rezoned that, like I said, that the community is still concerned. And it's already zoned to do like a lot of stuff that they are not wanting to happen. So yeah, I most definitely I agree with the result of to deny. So we'll just be moving forward with it when it comes out.
So the tools available, obviously, the developer has heard your comments and sentiment from the community. So maybe there's, you know how I love conversation, so I always encourage conversation. But you have obviously a couple of tools there to work with. So anything I can do to help you.
Yeah, thank you. Alan, he's always been great to work with. So, he's understanding. So we'll get through it.
Very good. Any other comments? All right. Thank you very much. Karen?
And that's the last of the cases with opposition. I'm happy to speak to any of the others if there's questions.
Let me see if anybody would like a particular case. I am not seeing anything. I do see the chairman he's trying to use my name over there to light up. So Chairman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And this may not be a big deal. I'm not sure, Mr. Attorney. Karen, in the resolution, in the link, in the resolution that Dan signed, it says so as to amend condition 1. In the caption here, we've got so as to lift condition 1, and then it says subject to certain conditions, which is a little confusing the way it's worded here in the caption as opposed to, I think, what the intent of this is, because it is amending a condition. There were 3 conditions on this property.
Yes, I will check the language, I think, and I'm going to reference my notes here because the request was to lift the condition, and Staff and Planning Commission said to deny that instead of lifting commission, and it decided instead to recommend it to amend the condition, but perhaps it's not clear and we need to get the right language.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be reflected in the caption here.
I will correct
to make it a little more clear. But then the second thing is, the amendment is no more than 2 curb cuts onto snow, but the third condition is no more than 3 lots. So is that going to be an issue if they divide this into 3 lots, but you can only do 2 curb cuts?
We did discuss the option, and then, because I think their proposal is showing shared drives. So their proposal, I believe, is 2 units with 2 detached ADUs with a shared drive.
Okay, so that's not
and I don't believe that's a problem, but I will confirm that with the applicant that they understand what the request, what the condition
and that is allowable, I guess. So, I mean, so is there a width on the curb cut? Can you have a 60-foot curb cut?
So when we talked about this with CDOT, some of the concerns were that they would handle during permitting was interruption of the sidewalk and making the turning movement and having too many curb cuts as you turn from snow on the corner. So I believe that meets their needs based on the site plan they provided, but I will confirm the caption and follow up with the applicant. So they have 4 units. My understanding is the 2 units and then 2 detached, but not everyone gets a curb cut. So the idea was for them to have shared curb cuts for those properties.
Okay. And do you happen to know the reason why the condition number 1 was originally placed as far as rear entry only?
I do not know, but the property next to it also had a similar condition and got that condition lifted in 2018.
Okay.
I'm sorry, in 2020, the original condition. So there was a set of them, and that one has already had the condition lifted. So I don't know that this property used to, if it was part of that larger property to the north, it had alley access. It could have come off an alley. Now it can't because it is, I don't know if the ownership is separated or a new lot's been created, but I don't see, it doesn't have alley access to the rear that I see.
Okay.
So I'm
So there
assuming
would-
somewhere in there it should.
So there wouldn't be any way to access this property without,
I don't
along the
see
snow.
that. I see where if it was grouped with the property to the north of it and it was intended to use the alley off of Snow Street,
Okay.
that you could do a shared drive coming in off that alley, but it looks like those properties have been divided and are no longer the same development.
okay. Thank you.
But I'll confirm the applicant understands the condition.
Okay.
Karen,
And
yeah.
we need to clear up the.
Yes.
And I will, yes, I'll confirm that. Thank you for that.
Did we put a wrench on that before first reading?
Yes,
And make sure and check with the chairman?
I will.
And the
I'll follow
applicant,
up.
please. All right, thank you.
and then just have 2 quick slides on text
And the city
amendments.
attorney, I heard a whisper in my ear.
Yes,
so
the
sorry.
city attorney and Maria have been wonderful as we've been going through the zoning code changes.
I would never leave him out.
We do have some text amendments, and this is a little bit to the comment of making sure we're being responsive as we go through the process. This is the second round of text amendments for the new zoning ordinance, and a lot of this came about as we have more people using it, and as we went through the equivalency mapping process, just to make sure that nothing has gotten left behind, and that we're making that equivalent zone transition process as smooth as possible. So a lot of this came out of discussion and feedback we got. Thanks to LDO for flagging that we had dropped the protected zone language. We had a lot of feedback about children's homes and has had some questions about children's homes, so we went in and made sure that they were in other zones. Right now, I believe they were only in one zone, and that was more of an oversight.
Karen, those are protected by state.
So these are children's homes that would be orphanages and not group homes under state law, according to the definition. But I'm happy to follow up with you, but these would be like Children's Baptist Home or Chambliss. It was what we were thinking of that definition encompasses.
More than just a residential home.
That's correct. And then during the process, we had an applicant mention that C3, the former C3 zone, did not require parking. And although there was usually lots and lots of 13 conditions loaded up on that zone, so this just acknowledges that if you were C3 or prior to the new zoning map, that you do not have to provide parking unless you have conditions on the property. And the property owner just mentioned that they were planning on using more of their site because they weren't going to have to provide parking. So this is just an acknowledgement that zone existed. Much of C3 was replaced by form-based code, but there are some properties still out there. And then also a change to some dimensional standards. I think that we just somehow in the process inadvertently changed this. So this allows single unit homes in the urban overlay to be built on 25-foot wide lots. And that is what we currently have. It's similar to what we currently have. It had changed to 40, and somehow in the process, so we just changed that back to what we have, and that was the original proposal is when we started, so. And that's all the changes we have for now.
For now.
Yes. And it's good to have people using it and flagging stuff and asking questions. It's been good to be able to resolve some of those concerns by having amendments.
That's exactly, and that's the process that we promised. And I'm very glad to see that. Karen, thank you. Thank you to RPA. Chris, thank you. Thank you to the mayor's office for the engagement. Council, thank you you have been not only engaged through this entire process, but you've held your attention in each case in your district. And I thank you, and I hope that your constituents realize what a lift this has been, even to this process, and that you have been engaged absolutely 100%. Do you have anything else for us this afternoon?
I don't, unless you have any questions for me.
No, and thank you, Chris, for the sign ordinance update. That is something that I know I'm super excited to see change and be created, updated, because it is a long time coming. And so thank you for that, and we'll see you on the 7th for an update.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Council, any further questions or comments before we close out planning and zoning? Then, Mr. Attorney, I believe we have an attorney-client. You do need a few minutes for us, so I'm going to adjourn or put us in recess until 5:30. We have some work to do in the back.